Please welcome up Cyndi Mitchell.
Good evening. My name is Cyndi Mitchell. I am the sister of Mario Romero, who was murdered by Vallejo police on September 2nd, 2012. He was sitting in front of our house, minding his own business, like a lot of us do. Sometimes we sit in front of our houses, we talk on the phone, some people smoke, some people just sit in the car just to, get a peace of mind. My brother was attacked by Vallejo police officers, Sean Kinney and Dustin Joseph. He was fired at 40 times. He was shot 30 times. He was shot 8 times through the palms of his hands. He was cut from his seatbelt and his body was stolen from the scene of the crime. And we didn't bury him until after a month later, because they were hiding his body for a month. The officer that murdered my brother, Sean Kinney, he killed 3 people in 2012 in Vallejo, all within a 5-month period. After he murdered my brother, he planted a police-issued training weapon inside of his car. And when they recovered the weapon, the only fingerprints on the gun was the officer. And the witnesses who saw this gun were denied. Immediately after, we began protesting and calling for justice, because there's no way else to put it. This is not, there was no cause and effect. They say, oh, well, they fear for their lives. You don't fear for your life in a situation where you're creating chaos. You don't fear for your life when you're the only one who has a weapon that can kill somebody. You don't fear for your life when you're terrorizing a community. There's no fear. This officer claimed to have fear for his life, but he jumped on the hood of my brother's car and repeatedly shot his gun after reloading. My brother kept saying, wait, we have our hands up, we have our hands up. And I keep trying to figure out, in the process of shooting 40 bullets into the body of an unarmed man, how in the hell did they fear for their lives, and when exactly did they stop? All of the people who have been victims of this officer were unarmed, and they were in white cars. And the city of Vallejo doesn't seem to think that's a problem. They don't seem to think that their police officers are a problem. They do not even drug test them after being hired. So if you were hired 15 years ago, that's the only drug test that you got. And that is also the only psychological evaluation that you got. They're using a marriage and family counselor to say that their officers are fit for duty and they're leaving the community at risk. There are so many claims for misconduct out there that the Vallejo Police Department should be under investigation. And there's no way to put it other than to say that this is terrorism. This is terrorism in our communities. And since my brother was murdered, I've been out there fighting. My family's been out there fighting, and we have suffered a lot. And we've had a lot taken from us for standing up and demanding justice. And, we've been illegally evicted. We've had our cars illegally towed. We've gone through all the different things just because we're standing up for justice. And, it's so sad that when you stand up against a crime that's committed against police, they automatically assume that something is wrong with the people that are standing up. And there's this process, they murder them in the flesh and then they attempt to assassinate their character. And that's what they did to my brother. They told the public that he was a parolee who was afraid of going back to prison, who jumped out of his car and pointed a fake gun at 2 officers with 2 real guns and unlimited bullets and said, I'm not going back to prison. But he had never been on parole and never been to prison before. you know. And so we spend so much time over these last 2 years. We've been trying to educate the public and let them know this is what happens. This is what we've experienced. And this is the process. Once they kill your loved one in the flesh, then they go on this, a character assassination, and they create all these lies. And there's never a point where they can say, oh, well, we apologize, or, oh, we were wrong, because they know when they find out who this person is. Because when they murdered my brother, they didn't know who he was. They were asking, do you know who he was? Then they tried to pretend that it was a car stop, like they pulled him over. They even went as far as changing the crime scene. So it's a lot of stuff that happened, and it was a lot of witnesses that were begging the police department, hey, we seen what happened. We know that they came and they attacked. They shined their light and they attacked, and that's what they did. There wasn't a, let me see your driver's license, or, there was no reason why they had to stop and attack like they did. And no one seems to think that it's a problem. So we're fighting so hard to make sure that we educate the public so they can understand that when your loved one is murdered, it doesn't have to be through any fault of their own. And when they're murdered, your family becomes a target. You become a target because you're standing up against an injustice. And, we've sacrificed everything just to be sure that we can tell Mario's story, because he shouldn't have had to die like that. And we are fighting for change, and we're out here, we're stumping the ground, we're marching miles, and, we're breaking our bodies down, because it's important for us to get our stories out. It's important for the world to know that if the system is created to protect us, why is it killing us? Why are these officers killing us, And why aren't the proper protocols put in place to ensure that officers that are on drugs are not on the force, So, we've made complaints. We've been to the district attorney's office. We wrote letters to the attorney general, We were told by the Solano County District Attorney's Office that they didn't want to accept evidence that we had that proved that it was a murder. They told us, well, you have your attorneys and we have ours. And when we told them that we weren't represented by an attorney and we were more interested in justice, they were said, well, you have your attorneys and we have ours. So in our course, we're trying to find out who the district attorney is supposed to help, and if they're supposed to, help the community and the people that they serve and the people who elected them. We find out that, there are relationships that are too cozy, and these district attorneys, they don't want to step out of their comfort zone in order to prosecute their friends. And in the course of our investigation, we realized that there was a man employed by the Solano County District Attorney's Office by the name of O'Brien Kinney, who happens to be the cousin of Sean Kinney, who's the murderer of my brother, Mario Romero. And, we don't get a response for that. And we can understand why the failure to investigate was there, and why these crimes have been able to be continuously committed. But we can't understand why this officer has been promoted to detective, and he's now in charge of handling officer-involved shootings. So it's a repeated slap in the face. So it's important for everybody to come out April 14th to stand up, to fight for justice, because this can't continue to happen. This could be anybody. It doesn't matter who you are, what you are doing. If you get attacked by the police, they will say that they fear for their lives, and they will try to assassinate your character after they've killed you. And just like in the course of regular business for the Vallejo Police Department, they will attempt to cover up the crime, and you will have to fight for justice. And they will change their story repeatedly. And in the end, it still won't make sense because it's a lie. So I'm out here. Today I drove 100 miles to get here, and I'll be driving 100 miles back. But it's important for me to be here because it's important for me to tell my brother's story, and it's important for me to support all of the people who I call my family members in the struggle, because we all share heartbreak. We all have days where we don't know how we're going to get through it. We don't know, if we can get out of the bed. Sometimes we're so overstricken with grief that we don't know if we can continue to go on, But, each one of us have learned so much over this time with being with each other, learning how to protest, learning how to stump the ground, get people out, and educate the masses. So we've become the anchor and the backbone for each other, because when it comes to trying to get public services, you're pretty much left to the wolves, and you're pretty much just ostracized, and people, they don't want to have anything to do with you because, they say, oh, you're disruptive, or, oh, you're a troublemaker. But, what do you do to make noise? Will you sit and allow your loved one to be murdered and not do anything? I won't. I don't consider that an option. So, I've been homeless because I was evicted for calling the mayor a coward. His wife signed off on my eviction papers. So in the process of me burying my brother, I was being evicted from my house, not because I didn't pay my rent, but because they have the power to do you wrong, and in the end, you'll get your recourse, but not right now. So, I've pretty much been fleeing and just trying to, ensure that my kids are safe and my family is safe, just because I'm standing up for justice. But you know what? Justice is coming. We are fighting. We're not going away. It's important because, we want our kids to be safe. So it's important for everyone to come out on April 14th to stand up and show the world, hey, enough is enough. And it's time to stand up, and the killing has got to stop. Thank you guys for listening to me. You guys have a great day.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming from Sacramento, 100 miles? All right, Elk Grove. Are we going to stand with these families on April 14th? Are UC Berkeley students going to be in the house on April 14th? All right. Where are you guys going to be on April 14th? UC Berkeley students, anyone know? Oakland at 1 o'clock, but Sprout Plaza at 11:30 to head down there. And maybe, we should talk about it too. Maybe it'd be good to do an action on campus to actually, force other students to confront the reality that we're hearing today. So let's talk after this is over.